I joined an engagement pod in 2018. It ruined my LinkedIn. It took me a long time to bring back the right people into my audience. When I was creating content, the only people that would ever see it were the people in the pod. And the people in the pod weren't interested in what I have to do for a living or interested in what I'm selling. So it took me a long time to get rid of those people and then start curating a new audience all over again. So from experience, I can say it's going to ruin your LinkedIn, despite what the owners of the engagement pod try promoting.
Teaching you to make useful content so that you can build long-term relationships with the people that matter to your business. Hello and welcome to Useful Content, and today we have a brand new teacher in our Useful Content classroom, Gus Bhandal. Hi, Gus.
Hi, Juma. How you doing?
I'm doing well, and I'm sure you are doing well out there in Coventry. It's great to have you on.
I am, yeah. It's all good here. Not so sunny right now, but usually the sun always shines in Coventry, but not so sunny today.
Yeah, Coventry is the center of the world, yes?
Of course, center of the universe, yeah. That's the hashtag.
All right, great. So, Gus, I know we came here today to talk specifically about some LinkedIn-related things because that's what you're into, that's what you do. So could you please share with the people what you do and how you help your clients make useful content?
Absolutely. So I'm a LinkedIn trainer. I teach people how to use LinkedIn. I tell people I'm the UK's #1 LinkedIn trainer, according to my mom. And essentially, I teach business owners, senior executives, and teams how to make the most of LinkedIn, how to really leverage it for their business and make sure that, quite frankly, they're using it like a proper social media platform.
Right. So what makes LinkedIn so different than any other social media platform?
My favorite thing about LinkedIn, and particularly the thing that makes it different to other platforms, is the fact that you can curate the perfect audience. One of the best things about LinkedIn is that it has a search box. We can use it for free. And essentially we can search for anybody that we want to search for and anybody that we want to connect to. Whereas every other platform, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, Snapchat, anywhere else, you're relying on people to follow you. You're relying on people to find you on those platforms. On LinkedIn, you get to do the outreach and you get to connect to exactly who you want to connect to. In essence, curating the perfect audience.
Right. And so would you say that one of the most powerful features on LinkedIn is actually search? Because I don't really hear people talking about that much. People often talk about how bad the algorithm is. They talk about video versus text versus carousels. But are you saying that search is something that people really overlook as one of the more powerful parts of LinkedIn?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of LinkedIn trainers that will talk about things like having the perfect content strategy, which is obviously a good thing. And also how to, kind of work the algorithm, etc. But I think a lot of people forget that there's a search box where we can curate the perfect audience. Most people go through life on LinkedIn and just connect to everybody they've ever worked with, or everybody they met at networking, or friends of friends, or content that they want to see, etc. And that's all great. But ultimately what happens is your audience becomes very disparate. So that when you are creating your perfect content, it's not necessarily seen by your ideal audience. So the search box is ridiculously powerful. And it's so powerful that LinkedIn have a whole separate tool called Sales Navigator, which is essentially the search box, but made 1,000 times more powerful. So we can have the free search box or we can use the paid tool as well. But it's all about that search.
Yeah. So one of the things that I often I'm sad about is the fact that I am not very good at LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I know of it. Well, what happens that when you get on the platform, every now and again, LinkedIn will give you free access to LinkedIn Navigator. But every time I get it, I'm like, okay, how does this actually work? What are the real benefits of the tools that are in it? Are there any tools that you pay for that you think is essential for marketing teams, for CEOs, for business owners to use when they pay for LinkedIn and they have LinkedIn Sales Navigator, any particular tool?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily pay for any additional tool as such, but particularly when it comes to Sales Navigator. So LinkedIn has a number of paid options. You have the free option, you have the premium option, and you have the Sales Navigator option. You have other like, the recruiter and the career mode, etc. I normally tell people forget the premium mode, either use the free version or go straight to Sales Navigator. And with Sales Navigator, the search is immense. And I think, as you said, many people don't know how to use it. They pay for Sales Navigator. It can become very overwhelming because it's a proper lead generation tool. And then people just think, oh, it hasn't worked for me, etc. Sales Navigator is brilliant to create lists of people that you want to connect to. And it has a massive criteria in terms of how many employees does a company have? What's their job title? Where are they based? Who are they connected to? And my favorite kind of feature of Sales Navigator is, have they posted within the last 30 days? And I always tick that box, yes, because if you're connecting to people that aren't using LinkedIn on a regular basis, all you're doing is curating an audience of people that don't use the platform, which means that your content is not going to get seen by anyone. So I always make sure that I connect to people that are active on the platform, and Sales Navigator helps me to find who those people are.
On that note, so one of the things that always happens to me is that when people send me connection requests, because that's one of the things you can do on LinkedIn, when people send me connection requests and I go to check their profile, which if I don't know you, send me a connection request, I check your profile out to see what you're up to. Sometimes you see that they haven't posted anything. Well, sometimes you see they haven't posted anything yet. And sometimes you realize that based on their posting frequency or their posting cadence, they may be posting once every 6 months or whatever that might be. How important is it that people who you're connecting to are active in that way? Because I've heard many people say, and I probably have said it myself, that a lot of times the inquiries you get for your business are people who don't engage, or some of them don't even make any content. Is there a way to connect somebody's posting activity to how likely they are to buy from you or engage with you for business?
One of the things when it comes to people who are active on the platform, there's a couple of schools of thought here. There are some people who are lurkers who just literally open LinkedIn and go through and just look at content and then leave. There's no way of really knowing if people are active on the platform without them either reacting to content or creating their own content. So if I go to somebody's profile and it says this person hasn't posted yet, or this person hasn't posted in the last 3 months, etc., next to the button where it says posts, I click on comments, and then I see if they're commenting. So if they're regularly commenting, then it shows me that they're active, because actually a commenting strategy is also a powerful way to bring people into your world, etc., and to obviously to talk to a lot of people. So if they're not posting regularly, I at least check that they are commenting regularly. If they're not posting anything, nor are they commenting, that tells me two things. That either tells me that they're a lurker, that they're just hanging around on the platform, or they're not active at all. In both senses, they're not necessarily a good fit for an audience, because obviously the whole point of LinkedIn is you want an active audience because it's about engagement, it's about two-way conversation, etc. So I look at people's posts and whether they're posting. If they're not posting, I click on comments and see if they're commenting. And obviously, if they're commenting, a commenting strategy is still a good strategy for LinkedIn without necessarily posting. So it's one or the other normally.
You look at that and you determine, well, okay, they're not making any content, but they are commenting. And depending on how they are, you could actually look at that. And all this is not using Sales Navigator. This is just now just looking at their standard stuff on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So then how does Sales Navigator, and I know we kind of going off on a little bit of a tangent here, how does Sales Navigator come in with this?
So Sales Navigator helps us to find those leads in the first place. So for example, if I use the search box, I can find people who are, for example, second degree connections. So, friends of friends. I can search for particular job titles or locations, etc. But it's a very, it's a basic search, whereas Sales Navigator can go much deeper in terms of, has this person posted in the last 30 days? Is this person connected to I don't know, certain influencers or content creators, etc. What company does this person work for? How many employees does that company have, etc. For me personally, I do a lot of corporate LinkedIn training. So I look for kind of like the CEOs or the executives of an organization that has more than 10 staff, for example. So 10 employees. So that would be a criteria for me. And that could be a criteria for others, or it could be, we can base it upon very specific job titles. So whereas on the free version, you would just type in, I'm looking for an accountant, or I'm looking for somebody who works in HR, or a videographer. In Sales Navigator, it actually gives you the job titles. So it could be human resources manager, human resources director, etc. And you can put multiple people into a search to then create a list. And essentially that becomes a lead list. You would save that list. You can contact people individually as and when. But there's so much more in terms of Sales Navigator, because when you pay for LinkedIn, you also get to send personalized requests. So, and because unfortunately on the free version, you can't do that anymore. You can only do it to, I think it's up to 10 people per month. Whereas on the paid version, you can send unlimited connection requests.
Right.
As in notes that go with the connection request.
Like the personalized part of the request. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, and it's all things like that. So rather, as well as being a good lead generation tool, paying for LinkedIn gives you access to lots of things that you don't normally get on the free version. But I should say, for the most part, for 80% of people of what they need, the free version of LinkedIn is more than enough.
Yeah, I agree, because I am using the free version. I am using the free version of LinkedIn. Okay, so there are two things that I used. You said that I wanna kind of go deeper on. The first thing is the personalization of messages, and whether or not that's a good idea. There has been tons of back and forth over years, arguments for and against why personalizing messages is the way to go or isn't the way to go. What is your take on that? And I'll get back to the second thing I want to ask you thereafter.
So my opinion is that every connection request should have a personalized note that goes along with it, mainly because it saves the other person lots of time, because you're telling them very directly, I would like to connect with you for this reason. Now, I always train people and recommend to people that they say something about the other person, because you have to do the research to save the other person time. So for example, if you and I didn't know each other and I send you a blank connection request, you would have two choices. You can either reject that, or you would have to do your due diligence and go through my profile. And then you will see what I do for a living, do I create content, who I'm connected to, etc. But unfortunately, by sending you a blank connection request, I've put the onus on you to do the research. Whereas what I would normally do is I do the research. So I look at Juma's profile, I look at your headline, I look at your connections and mutual connections, what content you're creating, your testimonials, etc. And then I would send you a note to say, I would like to connect with you because I love your content, or you're connected to these people, or, etc. Those, something that I can only write about because I've read your profile. And because of that, that puts the onus on me to do the research and takes the onus away from you. So I'm saving you time, because then you can make a decision straight away. Like, yes, I will accept Gus's connection request, or he's lying, I don't like his reasons, I would decline, So it's a personalized connection request. Not only is it lovely, it's, when we go to networking events, we introduce ourselves. We tell people, hello, I'm Gus. I do this, this, and this. Now tell me more about yourself. Whereas I think a blank connection request is literally just giving somebody your business card and walking away. So, and obviously we don't like that. We don't like people that do that.
So that's a good point that you've made, first of all. The whole idea of giving people the work to do, even though you are the one who is reaching out. Right. I think that's a very, very good point. So I have a podcast. You're on it right now, obviously.
Yes.
And I think part of the thing that I've discovered in doing that is that when people ask you to be on a podcast and they don't say anything, they don't explain why, or they don't give context, then you have to now go and find out what it is about. You may have to go and try to, chase down an episode. And so I think that point is very, very valid in the fact that when you remove friction, it makes it easier for people to make a decision.
Absolutely.
So that's number one. The second thing is that I know you have like a 4-stage strategy for how
Hmm.
people should approach LinkedIn. So the first one is optimizing your profile. And the
Yeah.
second one is finding your ideal clients. So what you're talking about
Hmm.
here with LinkedIn Navigator is that second part of the thing. It's like
Hmm.
targeting the people you want to target. Okay. So after you've done that, and I know probably we could talk a little bit about how you tell your clients to make content. So after
Hmm.
you found the people that you want to connect with, and you send them these requests, then what's the process after that? Is there something that you should or shouldn't do? Are there things that you should try to avoid? Should you be taking advice from certain people? I don't know. What happens next?
So for me, the 4 stage process, ultimately it's optimize your profile, connect to great people, create great content, and do plenty of engagement with those people. Now, particularly in terms of the second and the third kind of parts of the strategy, when I connect to people, I always say something nice about them. The thing that I don't do is sell to them. I don't say, "Oh, thanks for connecting. I do LinkedIn training. It looks like your LinkedIn is rubbish. Please buy my services." So I don't sell to people. That's where the third part of the strategy comes in, because I let my content do the talking. Because ultimately, we have to get people to know us, like us, and trust us. And generally, people won't hand over their money until they trust us. And ultimately, I get people to trust me because I have a solid content marketing strategy, which basically explains who I am, what I do, what I'm good at, my case studies, my testimonials, my background, my experience, my education, etc. So that's where my content strategy comes in. So that when people that I connect to see that, over time, they learn to trust me, as opposed to me just going in and saying, "Well, thank you for connecting. This is what I sell. Please buy it." Because at that point, they have no idea who I am. It's kind of like the first person that ever drank a can of Coca-Cola. He didn't know what that was going to taste like, but the second person knew that the first person didn't die, so he drank a can of Coca-Cola as well. So it's that case of there has to be that level of trust, right?
Yeah. I connected with Gus and I didn't die, so it might be a good
Yeah,
idea for you to.
exactly. I think that's my new strapline. That's going in. Yeah.
All right, great, 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 great. All right, so I know we've been talking for a little bit, and we're supposed to be talking about how to make your LinkedIn efficient and effective, your process
Mhm.
inside of that. And I suspect that we've touched on a few things that you may have wanted to talk about already. So let's segue into that
Sure.
overall idea of making your process of being on LinkedIn more effective and more efficient. And the first question I would ask is, what does that really mean? What does being effective and being efficient on LinkedIn look like?
There is a lot of content on LinkedIn from people that suggest that you should be there a lot. Like, I see processes all the time where people say, I wake up at 5 o'clock, I have an ice bath, I take my dog for a walk for 5 hours, and then I come home and I spend 6 hours on LinkedIn doing outreach. And, now I've made £20,000, this week, and all that kind of stuff. And for the most part, it's all lies. It's not what I like to teach people. Unless you're a LinkedIn trainer yourself, you have better things to do. So I teach people that actually just with a few minutes a day, or just with the kind of a few set activities each day, you can make your day efficient and be just as good as those people that spend 8 hours a day on LinkedIn, because it's just a smaller scale. And I think the problem is that there are, like I said, unless you're a LinkedIn trainer, there is way too much advice about being on LinkedIn all day, every day, because it's not necessarily about the hustle. LinkedIn should form part of your day. There's a big digital marketing world out there, big strategy world out there. We have to get clients. We have other things to do. We have to eat. We have to sleep. There's only so much in our day that we can do. So I teach people how to use LinkedIn efficiently just by spending a small amount of time a day rather than 8 hours a day.
Right. Okay, good. So the efficiency part is that you're building a business, you have a life, you have things you want to do that are important. You should not be spending 1 second more on LinkedIn than you really have to in order to accomplish your goals. So that's
Correct.
basically what it is. And I know about those people who talk about it's, I don't know, probably their day has a lot more hours in it, maybe 48 hours as opposed to 24. But the
Yeah.
description that they give it almost seems as if you have to like live on LinkedIn. You have to be
Mm.
on it constantly. And I know for most people, that is way far from the reality. All right, so now that we've established that as how to be what efficiency means and what being effective means, let's talk about how you do that. Where's the first place you start when you're teaching a client how to be effective and efficient on LinkedIn?
So once we've optimized our profile, so made sure that our profile says all the right things and is covered in keywords of what we do. So my profile is covered in words like social media, digital marketing, LinkedIn training, etc. That's what I do for a living. So it's all over my profile. Then I curate the perfect audience. So essentially with clients, I tell them, let's have some daily tasks, some weekly tasks, and some monthly tasks. And a daily task could be, let's go and engage with 5 or 10 people today. Let's go and comment on, like, just spend 10 minutes a day, just scrolling through your feed. And if you have curated the perfect audience, then your feed should be perfect to you. You shouldn't have to see content that is not relevant to you. So what you're going to do every day is spend a few minutes just engaging with other people. A weekly task would be that I would say create 1 or 2 pieces of content per week that you're going to publish. You can either schedule them or publish them, as and when. But also a weekly task is connect to a few new people every week. Keep building that audience, so keep curating an audience. But I recommend just a few people per week. I think there's a limit of you can connect to 100 people per week. I don't know how true that is. It's always changing, but generally you shouldn't be connecting to 100 people per week, because what that will do is that will grow your audience too fast and you won't get enough people to know you, like you, and trust you. So if you build it slowly but surely, you can send people DMs, you can send them messages, you can engage with their content, etc., in an efficient fashion. So a daily task would be to engage with people. A weekly task would be to connect to a few people, but also write a couple of posts per week. A monthly task would be to plan your content of a month. So in terms of, particularly if you have content pillars, so every month I'm going to post at least one case study, at least one testimonial, at least one post about what I do for a living, at least one post about, I don't know, a networking event, one post about a podcast I've been on, etc. So it's all that kind of that monthly content, which makes it efficient. So you're not waking up in the morning thinking, oh, I haven't posted any content today, or I don't think of any content, so let me just post something. So it's those daily, weekly, and monthly tasks that only take a few minutes each day, but that create that consistency. Because I think one of the biggest things on LinkedIn is consistency. Those people that aren't consistent are the ones that aren't getting success.
That's good. Let me just zero in on something you mentioned at the start of what you were saying. How can one engage and not seem fake? Because I know some people engage because they're told to engage, but they don't know how to do it in a way that is genuine. How can someone do that?
I think it's finding content so engaging with somebody authentically and with integrity and honesty is finding content that resonates with you. And so LinkedIn is very much a storytelling platform. Whereas before it used to be a place where people just put their CVs and just tried to get a job, etc. Now it's a place where people tell stories. And the reason people tell stories is because it resonates with others. So if I tell a story that, oh, I went networking today, or I bought some orange chocolate today, or I bought some new orange trainers, or I went to this event, or I was on this podcast, or I've done this training, or I've got this qualification, it resonates with other people because other people will say, oh, I also love orange chocolate, or I hate orange chocolate. And then they get into a conversation. It's actually, there's no harm in just being authentic and writing content, like writing comments, etc., that on content that resonates with you. Sometimes the content and the comments aren't necessarily related to your work, but it's about building relationships. It's about building friendships. If I spend all day, every day saying, oh, I love your post, just so you know, I'm a LinkedIn trainer, would you like some LinkedIn training? Eventually people will just switch off and they'll stop responding to me. Whereas if I talk about stuff like, if you talk about podcasts or videos or the equipment that you use, I could reply and say, oh, this is a really good post because I haven't got a mic yet, or I haven't got a decent HD camera, or whatever it may be. And it's that kind of content where it resonates with one another, which then helps both of our audiences to see each other. So if I comment on your content, all of your audience will see my comment, and all of my audience will see your content, more or less. Not necessarily all, but some of them. But it's that sharing, it's that authenticity of just having a conversation, just like you would in real life.
Yeah, I see you worked in orange chocolate into the conversation.
Always, yeah. It's I always talk about orange chocolate. There is a reason. I mean, it's a long story, but I always used to teach people about marketing segmentation, and I used to use orange chocolate for it. But now I talk about it because as we're getting closer to Christmas, most people send me orange chocolate in the post, and my wife hates orange chocolate, which means I get to eat it all.
You get all of it.
Yeah, exactly. So,
that's a little trick I learned in my house as well. Just test things until you find something that you like that no one else likes, and just buy that.
Absolutely.
It's a little trick. Talking about that, let's talk about what's the line between personal content and private. And okay, let me call it the Facebook line. How do you make sure not to cross that line? And is there actually a line between what is personal and what is private on LinkedIn? Or is this something false and you can just post anything that you want?
So I mean, that's a great question, because I talk about stuff. So for example, when it comes to personal content and personable content, unlike most other LinkedIn trainers, I actually like it and I really enjoy it, because actually it tells me more about the person. So I could say all day, every day, I'm a LinkedIn trainer. I'm a LinkedIn trainer. I'm a LinkedIn trainer. Eventually people switch off because they're like, I know what this guy does. But if I start talking about chocolate or trainers or networking or education or my wife or my kid or my car or my dog or whatever, I mean, I haven't got a dog, so I wouldn't talk about that, but whatever it may be, it starts resonating with other people. I don't think that there's a line. I think it's entirely up to you how deep you want to go. So for example, I never talk about my family. I never talk about my wife or my son on LinkedIn or indeed on any social media. I just don't want them involved in any conversations. But I do talk about my food or my networking or my car or the fact that I've gone for a walk or whatever it may be. And I know there are some people that tell really deep stories about like illnesses or diseases or people passing away, etc. I think LinkedIn is just an outlet. It has become the new Facebook. I think it's the outlet for people to tell those stories. I think the balance is that the line is drawn is if you want to tell stories because you want to tell a story, because you need to get it off your chest, as opposed to telling a story because you're expecting lots of engagement. As soon as you start telling stories for likes or for engagement or for comments, etc., that's where the line is drawn in my opinion. I think you have to tell a story because you want to tell a story, because ultimately that attracts your tribe. When it resonates with people think, oh, that's a good story. I will now engage with this story. But personally, I think the line is entirely up to you. And quite frankly, if somebody doesn't like your content, they can move on. There's a billion people on LinkedIn. They're bound to find something else.
Yeah. I'm thinking about over the last few years, let's call it the dog CEO story.
Yes,
you know that story. And also one person who got engaged and said, I got engaged this weekend. Let me tell you what it taught me about sales.
B2B sales, absolutely.
B2B sales, something like that. What do you think about those posts? Are they credible, or is that something that is are people blowing this out of proportion? What do you think about that?
I think so. The post where somebody engaged and said, here's what it told me about B2B sales, I genuinely couldn't tell if that was satirical or not. I didn't know if that was a joke. And lots of people saw it as a joke and lots of people didn't. But it got lots of engagement and that's fine. However, we don't know who that person is. I couldn't tell you that person. You couldn't name that person. We don't know who that person is. Now, I think that there are parts where it's blown out of proportion in terms of people now complain about things that don't actually happen. So for example, I think lots of people like the dog CEO story that never actually happened, but somebody somewhere made a joke about it. And now everybody uses that as an example. And I think in some cases it's exaggerated. What I would say though is we have to sell. This is the thing. I normally talk about an arbitrary figure of 70-30. So 70% of my content is very personal content, very personable content, talks about me, my life, etc. But 30% of my content is, just so you know, this is what I do for a living. I'm a LinkedIn trainer. I do LinkedIn training. Here's some testimonials. Here's a case study, etc. And I think it's finding that balance of telling stories that resonate with people because we wish to tell stories, but also making sure that people know what we do for a living. I think the stories about the CEO dog or the B2B sales, etc. I mean, sometimes I think they're overly exaggerated. People complain more about, I think I see more complaints than actual content of where those complaints originated, if that makes sense. So we just have to find that balance.
Yeah. That CEO dog was satire. They basically
Yes.
was saying, I remember the video because I obviously those things end up being off of LinkedIn. They end up on TikTok and Instagram, and you see these stories about somebody is making this piece of satire concerning someone who, well, the idea is that they were going to a job and they met a homeless person and they gave them some money, and then when they went for the interview, the homeless person was the actual CEO of the company.
Yes. Yeah.
So for those who don't know what the CEO dog story is about, it's basically the same thing. Some dog on the street, they gave him some treats. He went into the business and boom, the dog was the CEO and he got hired. Or he made you late for the interview or whatever it was.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I mean, obviously that post itself is satirical, but obviously I think it's making light of people who write content like that, which is basically it's completely fabricated, and all is just a story that we don't tell. I know that there's a particular person on LinkedIn who he's an author and he writes books, and he went to see a woman who was dying, and he signed her book, and she died with it on her chest and things like that. And it was just, when I see stories like that, I just think that's ridiculous. That's kind of like, but there are some people out there that choose to tell stories like that with no satire, with no humor. They actually mean that as a story. However, I think it's a very small minority. And to be honest, when I see content like that, I have two choices. I can either make a joke about it or I can just stop following those people, because ultimately I don't think those people will last long on a platform, because thankfully the human race is still intelligent enough to work out the difference between somebody who's trying to promote their business and somebody who's just trying to promote themselves.
What are your top 3 red flags that may cause you to stop following someone?
Overly argumentative content. I know a couple of people that they just love arguing with anything. I could write a post and say, my name is Gus, and they would send a post and say, your name isn't Gus. Kind of, they would just argue for the sake of arguing. So I think it's how you want to be treated in real life. I think if somebody is overly argumentative online, they're not somebody that I want to engage with. And that, I love alternative viewpoints, but when somebody is arguing for the sake of arguing, you just think that's, for me, that's a red flag. Another red flag would be kind of selling too much, like just being the person that always sells that, like, etc., with no actual substance. I think that's the thing. And actually that's probably related to a third red flag, in terms of, I like people to be their authentic selves, but I want some proof as well to back it up. If you have a 7-figure business, show me screenshots of your bank account. If you have some great testimonials, show me some screenshots of those testimonials. If you had some great clients, like, do that. And I think there's, the first red flag is people being overly argumentative. A second red flag is people who are only ever selling. And the third red flag are people not backing up what they're saying and just kind of, they're selling snake oil, basically. I see it all the time. Like, people say, oh, give me £10,000 and I will teach you to be a great speaker and guarantee you a speaking gig. And ultimately the speaking gig is their own event. It's like, anybody can do that. It's like, give me 10 grand, you can come and speak at my events. So it's, red flags generally relate to people who are inauthentic, people who don't have integrity, people who aren't being honest, people who can't back things up, people who don't have any experience, or, etc. And people just trying to sell things that they're not really good at. They're the kind of red flags that I see on LinkedIn, sometimes, not a lot, thankfully.
Yeah, that's true. And all of these outlandish claims about reaching from point A to point Z in just a couple of weeks. So
Yes.
it takes time. It takes time. And I find that, and this is probably human nature, I find that people are attracted to the outliers.
Mm.
So there may be somebody, and I'm not denying that this is true. There may be some people who start and very rapidly gain traction on LinkedIn, but the vast majority of people have to build over a long period
Yeah.
of time. That's the vast majority of people. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely agree. The people who have longevity on LinkedIn are the people that have a low bell curve in terms of it's a slow, well, it's not even a bell curve, actually. It's more of a kind of a graph that goes up. It's a slow burn, a slow build, etc. I've been on LinkedIn since 2007. By now, I should have 1 billion followers, but I don't, because my audience is curated to the audience that I wanted to create. And I talk to the people that I want to talk to. There are people, and we know who they are. They kind of people who join engagement pods, people who have all of a sudden, like within, I don't know, a month, they've got 100,000 followers. And then they start writing content like, oh, here's how I reached my first 100,000 followers. Here's how I earned £10,000 a week and all this. And it's like, that's complete lies. It's complete fabricated, because all your followers are fake. And I think the people that don't have longevity are the people that have a really high bell curve. Like, it goes up, but they will come down just as quick. And like I said, I've been on LinkedIn since 2007, and I've seen so many people come and go in terms of, oh, look at me, I'm really successful, I've got a big audience. And next thing you know, they've disappeared. We don't know who they are. They've either been banned, or their audience has worked out that actually you're fake, or the audience have worked out that they themselves are fake because they're all bots, etc. So I think there's, longevity on LinkedIn is based around curating the perfect audience and slowly but surely creating great content that those people want to read.
Yeah, and I think those people also, because whatever is in private will eventually come to be in the public. So I think they probably burn a lot of people privately, and
Mm.
eventually the word gets around that these people are not really who they say they are.
Yeah.
And so as a result, their business kind of just dries up because nobody
Mm.
trusts them anymore. So it takes a long time. But you mentioned engagement pods earlier, right? Some people may not know what engagement pods are. Could you explain what they are, and then give me your opinion or your take on engagement pods for building your following on LinkedIn?
Sure. So engagement pods are essentially groups of people that have decided that they should engage with each other's content artificially. So it's, for example, it could be a WhatsApp group. It could be something created, some sort of community where they post their content and everybody should jump onto that content and like it and comment on it, and, etc. So it's basically artificial engagement. It makes posts and people look more popular than they actually are. I'm not a fan of engagement pods in any way, shape, or form. I have had many a conversation with people about, people kind of say, well, what if all my ideal clients are in that engagement pod? Surely that's a good thing. And it's like, well, if they were your ideal clients, they wouldn't have to be in an engagement pod. They would just work with you anyway. It's kind of, and I think that's, people forget this about LinkedIn. Like, in terms of the 6 degrees of separation, you could connect to anybody in the world on LinkedIn. And if you're not connecting to them, then there's a problem with your outreach strategy. There's a problem with your content. There's a problem with your testimonials. There's a problem with a number of things. Being in an engagement pod, all that does is literally amplify the bad stuff that you're already doing. And it's artificial engagement. It's fake. And actually, it's against LinkedIn's terms and conditions, which is, I mean, not that LinkedIn generally does too much about it, but I'm not a fan of engagement pods at all. I prefer curating the perfect audience, creating great content, and being authentic and having integrity with an audience that will eventually get to know you, like you, and trust you.
Yeah, I agree. And I've been invited to engagement pods before. I'm sure you have. You've been invited to engagement pods, and it's always hilarious. I've never even, some people go in and look around and see what they're like and investigate. I know some people on the platform do that. I just think it's a hilarious thing because I think it's anti-community, anti-relationship. It's not healthy for your business. It's probably not going to help your business, and And yeah, and I've never said this publicly before, but I just think people should stay away. Just
Yeah.
stay away from it altogether.
Uh, I absolutely agree. Very early in my business, I started my business in 2017, and I remember I joined an engagement pod in 2018. It wasn't sold as an engagement pod. It was somebody I met networking. I thought they were a really nice person, and they seemed like they know a lot. They had a really big audience, and they said, "Oh, we've got a WhatsApp group, so why don't you join this WhatsApp group?" And what we do in that WhatsApp group is just share each other's content, and then we can go and engage on that content. And if you're not going to engage, then you can't be part of the group. And I thought, oh, that sounds like quite nice. It's like we're all being friends and we'll engage with each other. What I found was that I was engaging with lots of people, but they weren't engaging with me. So then when I asked the question, they said, oh, well, we don't want to ruin the algorithm, or we don't want to, it's going to affect for example, our Facebook ads and our outreach and our engagement. And I thought to myself, then why are you in this, in this situation? Like, why are you part of a pod, but not engaging, etc.? And it was just very weird. It was very one-sided. And then the owner of the WhatsApp group eventually came out and just said, just so you know, this is an engagement pod. So if you're not engaging, and when then you're going to leave. And when I started looking into it, that's when I thought, oh, this is definitely not something I want to be around. And to be honest, like I said, I've been on LinkedIn since 2007. When I joined an engagement pod in 2018, just soon after I started my business, it ruined my LinkedIn in terms of it took me a long time to bring back the right people into my audience. Because ultimately, when I was creating content, the only people that would ever see it were the people in the pod. And the people who were in the pod were people that weren't interested in what I have to do for a living or interested in what I'm selling, etc. So it took me a long time to get rid of those people and then start curating a new audience all over again. So from experience, I can say it's going to ruin your LinkedIn. It's going to ruin your engagement. The algorithm will work against you, etc. Despite what the owners of the engagement pod try promoting.
Yeah, that's such a great lesson. Thanks for sharing that, Gus. That is such a great lesson. Even though that happened a few years ago, it's still relevant right now because people are still doing the same thing, and eventually they'll have the same type of outcome. And to get back from that, it does take a lot of work. This conversation has been great. Gus, are there any final tips or any final advice that you'd want to give our audience about LinkedIn?
The only advice, just to expand on what I kind of said earlier, or to summarize what I said earlier, is to just make sure that you're efficient and effective. You only need to spend, despite what lots of people tell you, don't spend 8 hours a day on LinkedIn. It's just a few minutes every morning, curating the perfect audience, engaging with that audience, making sure that you get people to know you, like you, and trust you, and make sure that you do that with others as well. So be authentic, have integrity, be honest, all that kind of stuff.
All right, Gus, and some people may want to get in contact with the UK's #1 LinkedIn trainer. Where can they find you online?
So if you Google the hashtag, the UK's #1 LinkedIn trainer, I will be at the top of that page. Or indeed, just search for Gus Bhandal. It's a BH. So you'll find me on any platform. But generally, search for Gus Bhandal on LinkedIn. Come and connect with me. Please don't follow me. Connect me. Let's have a two-way conversation. That's what we should be doing.
That's an interesting thing you said. Normally people don't want people, they say connect, but what they really mean is follow me. Because I've heard a lot of like popular creators on podcasts, and when they pitch their LinkedIn, they say connect with me on LinkedIn, but they don't really mean connect. What they really mean is follow me, because if you send them a connection request, generally they tend to ignore it.
Yes.
But what you really mean is actually connect with you.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a long story, but LinkedIn used to have this thing called creator mode. And as part of creator mode, they changed the connect button to a follow button. Now, mine is still a follow button, so it's still there. But the reason it's still there is because I'm followed by lots of people all around the world, and actually helps me to do my due diligence. Because what will happen is people that choose to follow me but not connect with me, I regularly look through my followers. And obviously, if any of them are relevant or I'd like to have conversations with them, then that gives me the onus to outreach to them and say, actually, I see that you follow me, but actually I'd prefer to connect. Those people that I don't want to connect to, then I'm not having to reject their connection requests because obviously they've chosen to follow me. For the most part, particularly obviously friends of you, Juma, I would love to connect because it's that two-way conversation. LinkedIn doesn't work. I'm not a film star. I'm not Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm not John Travolta. I don't need just to be followed. I'm happy to have those two-way conversations because ultimately it helps my feed as well. I want to see content that other people are creating because it's good for conversation.
Leonardo DiCaprio, I couldn't tell.
Yeah, it's, like a very orange version.
A very orange version, right? Thank you so much, Gus, for having this conversation with us today about LinkedIn. I do really appreciate it. And thank you, students, for joining us on Useful Content Classroom. Dismissed. The Useful Content Podcast is brought to you and produced by Relate Studios. You can see the work we do at our website, relatestudios.com. If you like what you've heard on the podcast today, please follow, leave a rating, and come back next week for another great episode. And if you want to get more useful content in between that, you can follow me, Juma Bannister, on LinkedIn. See you soon in the Useful Content Classroom. But until then, don't forget to make useful content.